boom. Okay, I've sound, I've camera, it's working, everything's there, and I'm on time. I did it. I did this in like 3 minutes preparation and setup. I don't really have anything planned out to say. It worked. Okay, I did good. Good evening. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight for another week. Of course, this is the week before the big Hanami. I'll be reporting about how the Hanami was by this time next weekend. I have also worked on trying to have a cut down topics magazine for tonight, so that I have I'm not late, Ben Duncan. I was 20 seconds early, but the buffer goes over the thing. I was actually ahead of time this week. So yeah, I'm hopefully going to have less topics so I can have some I can get through it in 1 hour. I really want to do this in 1 hour because I got to sleep, and plus I've got some videos I want to upload, including a review of this, which I guess I'll do as part of the show tonight. As well as I also have prepared a track which I've been making today, which I've been making on my iPhone, but I'd quite like to record it, so I might record that live from the iPhone, do the performance recording of it, make it 3 minutes so I can use it with my Hanami videos, and that will be my official Sakura track, I'm going to call it, which everyone can go use for their Hanami videos if you want to do that sort of a thing. So good to see you all. I would usually say hello to everyone, of course, but we are now doing a different format where rather than spend the first 20 minutes saying hello and then ending up in a panic on the topics, I'm going to do the topics first. So here goes. I'm going to get into the topics and the news, and hopefully this transition will not ruin the sound. Let's do this. Boom. Boom, 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 and it's there. So, my topics, well, I guess you'll know from following a bit later what that first one is about. Let's go down. So first of all, big shout out to all of these people who are linked here. And you know what? I remember the name that comes up on Twitter, which is Sarkov. It's Man in Japan. Oh god, I hate it when I get this. So it is Man in Japan. So sorry, I suddenly thought I might be wrong. Anyway, Man in Japan has been using my music on his videos, so thank you for that, including a trip to go see a dentist 3,500 kilometers across Canada, which I appreciated that you had the presence of mind to even think to use my music for that. Same over here. You can see the always awesome chilling Kansai, talking about Hanami and so on, using my background music. Thank you to the people. Also another one here from, I think this is from Eric Trimmer, right? Eric Trimmer, indeed, and this was actually, I watched this just after I've been shooting a bunch of 360 videos, and I intuitively went to go and click around. It looks lovely. I had no idea that Austin had, it's a really nice video shot from a bicycle from, I think, using a GoPro camera, and I had no idea that Austin had like a river front, like a waterfront like this. It's a really nice video, although it made me immediately want to look around like I've gotten used to doing with my 360 camera. But it's cool. I love that these people picked out some tunes, and not always like the best known tunes. Like they picked out some kind of obscurish ones as well, which I like. I'm really glad that people did that. So, and that's pretty cool. That on-screen icon. I've got to get better at using that stuff. There's some new features on there. But anyway, as you can see here, if you feature my music, I will feature you for using it. Check out Man in Japan. He's got awesome videos. Anyway, Chillin' Kansai, of course, and Eric Trimmer. And thank you guys for using my music. Also, a great video here, which I watched during the week and I favorited, from Unrested. He's actually gone out and he's kind of put himself, he's put himself out there, naming and shaming an unethical English school that's mistreated its English teachers. Victor had alluded to this in an earlier video without naming the school, but Scott went all the way and he pretty much named it, put all the information out there. And, you know, he's taking a chance by doing it, but there again, this is information that, you know, from a protection perspective, it does sound like it's happened to multiple people, that these people have been ripped off by this school. And it's a good example of what can happen if you're not careful, right? With the sort of situations that can happen and what the warning signs are. I recommend everyone interested in coming to teach in Japan, check out Unrested's video about do not work for this company. And support that video, actually. Because yeah, like I say, I think it shows some courage on his part to put that up there, and I really think this isn't a case of hilarious cultural misunderstanding. This is a case of taking advantage of people because of their visa status, and literally stealing from them and abusing their workers' rights. So yeah, go and watch that video. It's a good video. So the other big video from this week, which I don't have in here actually, but go and check out Gaijin, my mate from high school who did that fantastic series, 4 episodes on Japan. He's just created, he's finished the editing of the new series, 4 episodes from Singapore, and he put up the promo trailer for the new series. So you can go and check out the Gaijin channel, which I've posted here before. I'll add the link to the promo on here afterwards. The promo for Singapore looks really, really good. I mean, you know how good he is. He's a professional documentary, commercial satellite channel documentary maker to begin with, who decided to start a YouTube channel producing videos with amazing quality. And he's also a real dude, and he's got really cool subject matter. And talking with him personally, he talks about how much he's reveling just having creative control. He's like a... Well, Tokyo Kuni was a commercial video guy who could make excellent video as well. But he's a level above Kuni. I think because he's got, the updated access to all the equipment and so on. Although Kuni was definitely more of a gifted front guy. But it's a great season anyway. It's a great series, and it looks like the new season is coming up and it's going to be great. So go check that good stuff out. So the first thing I've got this week, the first topic, that's me. That's me when I was 22 years old. And I had a slightly different hairstyle back then. That was me in 1998. That was not actually when I arrived in Japan in 1999. So what happened this week was on March 23rd, I marked the 16th anniversary of my arrival in Japan for my original, for this current stay, which I'm still here at the moment. I've become a permanent resident in that time. I came 3 times before my current stay. I came once when I was 15, for 2 weeks on a school exchange in Fukuoka. That was my first visit to Japan. And then when I was about 20, in fact just after I turned 20, I came to Japan and I got a rail pass. I travelled all over Japan and saw my friends from the shop that I worked at in New Zealand. And that was pretty cool. That was for a few weeks. And then I came again the year before I graduated in 1998, when I spent the whole New Zealand summer break, which is during the middle of winter in Japan, between about December and February in Japan. I was staying at my girlfriend's house at that time, and I was working for free at a law firm to try to get some experience that I could use after I graduated to come back to Japan and try to get a job at a law firm in Tokyo. And in order to do that, I found a connection in New Zealand to someone at a law firm who's connected with a Japanese law firm, and I said, I will work for free if you just let me hang out in your office for 3 months as a law clerk. And I did that during the day, and at nights, in order to pay for my train fare and my lunches and to basically make sure I didn't go in debt, trying to gain work experience. They did actually pay me in the end, by the way, as well, but I asked them not to pay me because I knew I was going into a situation I wouldn't be able to do anything in the beginning, and I wanted them to let me work. So I did this at night. I taught English at an eikaiwa for 3 months, and it was really fun. And in my own way, I think I was pretty good at it. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And that was me at 20 years old in my first, my bar mitzvah suit, as it were. I haven't had a bar mitzvah, but that was my first suit. That was that I wore for special occasions at university, and that I wore for those 3 months when I was teaching and when I was going. And that's what I looked like when I was a university student. Well, actually, when I was a university student, I had long hair and I had a goatee beard, and I brushed up when I came to work in Japan. Obviously, that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, I don't know. I stumbled across that photo and I posted it. The 16th year in Japan. That is the year before I came to Japan. I came when I was 23. That's when I was 22. But indeed, and Yasa Posey, I will not twerk. Please, I'm sorry. I have standards, and you're gonna have to pay me at least $5 for me to do something like that. So anyway, it's a nice anniversary. I do like to mark the anniversary. It's easy to remember because it's close to family birthdays and so on. I always just notice, and I always just do a little 16th year, which is funny because I think I've mentioned this before. I did the math. I grew up. I spent like 2 years in Singapore, about 10 years total in Australia, and about 13 years in New Zealand, and 16 years in Japan. So you can add up and figure out that I'm turning 40 this year. I'm a 39-year-old. But as of 3 years ago, I realized I crossed this threshold that now Japan is the longest single country I've ever been to. And I guess when I get to about the 44-year-old mark, when I get past the, in fact, no, I'll have to get to 50 before it's more than all the rest put together. But I stop throwing dollars, Posey, mate. Keep your money. So yeah, but it is funny in a funny way. I always had this joke about, am I kind of a Kiwi that's like an Australian, or becoming more Australian, but I'm a Kiwi, and where have I been more? Now I've been more in Japan. Now I'm more Japanese, and I really feel that way actually as well. Whenever I go back to Australia or New Zealand, especially New Zealand, actually, I feel like I've become Japanese. I'm certainly not the same typical New Zealander, and what a New Zealander is has changed a lot in 16 years as well. And I honestly go back and I'm lost when I've gone back there. I am a Kiwi, no question, and I'm definitely more a Kiwi than an Australian, although I've got Australian sister and mother, and I lived a lot in Australia, so I think I understand Aussies, and I like Australians a lot. I like Australia. But I am a Kiwi, but there's definitely, I can say, 16 years, it's a big landmark, and it's pretty much all of my adult working life, starting from that situation when I had great hair. Great hair. I remember I used to get haircuts, and people would say, "Did all that hair come from him?" Yeah. Yep. Doesn't matter though. Doesn't matter. I'm cool with it. This is life. But that's how it all started. So that's pretty cool. And Ben Duncan, I don't really struggle with identity issues. I really don't. I'm actually comfortable with all of my multiple identities. I don't know. I am contemplative about my identity. I admit I think about it and I self-analyze it, but I don't have issues with it, which I know sounds kind of contradictory, but I think it's all cool. It's all good in the hood, as I like to say. So let's move along. So what do we got here? For more stories, we've got first one. Tokyo is considering removing overhead power lines in run up to the 2020 Olympics. Please, I think I've talked about the subject before. Do it. There's a few contradictory things about the overhead power cables. It's really hard. I love taking photos of Tokyo. You've all seen my Instagram thread. The biggest problem I have taking photos of Tokyo is finding a clear shot of anything not obstructed by power poles and lines like that. Why it is that way? There's a few explanations I can think of. Basically, of course, the infrastructure in Tokyo, especially the electricity infrastructure, was set up very quickly. It is easier and cheaper to put lines on a power pole, and it's easier to fix them than it is to have to dig under the ground and pull them out and find out where faults are. But it is unsightly to do things that way, obviously. It doesn't look good. And everyone talks about when there's an earthquake risk, when there's an earthquake. If you run outside, if you stay inside, of course, you risk having a building collapse on you. But if you're inside a safe building, it's safer than going outside where you will have glass and falling power lines fall on you, which is far more dangerous. And people point out, just for the earthquake risk, for the risk of falling power lines or down power lines and, touching those or getting struck by those, are a sufficient hazard as well for all sorts of reasons. And just the fact it's so unsightly. Ishihara actually had a few, the reason he was elected governor of Tokyo was not that he's a crazy fascist right-winger, although that's how it was interpreted. It's because he pledged simple things. He said he would reduce the number of crows. He said that he would improve the water quality. And I think he did a lot on the first two. He said he would improve the air quality, which he tried to do. He tried to ban diesel trucks from the central Tokyo area, which I would have supported. And the central government shot down his Tokyo legislation to do that, which was a shame. He was looking at ways to improve bicycle access. He was looking at creating a third airport in Tokyo because the two airports, Narita and Haneda, are both oversubscribed and too expensive. And I supported that. Unfortunately, the third base is a US Air Force base that he wanted to take back. It's on Tokyo land that he wanted to reconvert into a civilian airport, which again, he wasn't successful at that because he was blocked. Another thing that he said was he wanted to bury all these power lines. He said they're dangerous and they don't look good, and it's a good way. Plus, it's a project that could employ lots of people. So, What I can say about that, though, in terms of the risk, I come from Auckland in New Zealand. I was there for university and high school, and in the late 1990s, we did have a problem, which was that when they buried all the power cables, we have underground power cables in Auckland, when they buried them in the late 1990s, we had a problem where, so they buried them in the 50s, but in the 1990s, apparently one of these old cables had some sort of overload failure and it burst under too much load. And they couldn't find maps of where they had buried these transmission cables. So they're trying to find where the broken bit of line is underground, and they're digging all over Auckland looking for it. And this is all the power going into central Auckland goes through 5 cables, and one of them burst. So all the load transferred onto the other 4 cables. And while they're looking for the 5th one that burst, the next one burst, and then all the load went onto the remaining 3, and boom, boom, boom. I like to say the word boom, but they all started exploding, and the central Auckland business area went without electricity for months. As a result, it was crazy. It was actually worse than the Great East Japan earthquake in terms of power cuts. And it was because they were such idiots about the way that they went about burying the cables and not keeping proper records of it. I assume Tokyo would not allow that situation to arise here. But there again, we do have earthquakes, and people say, well, if you have earthquakes, you do have the risk of falling power cables, but there's also, well, what if they're underground and, I don't know, the plates move and the cables snap or something, or they become, hard to find? And I don't know. I mean, again, liquefaction, how does that affect things if you have the water table come up and surround all the cables with water? There are problems to think through, but it would really help the appearance of the city, for one thing. It would generate lots of jobs, and it would reduce that overhead safety risk. So I really hope that they do it anyway. I thought that was good news. That's why I put that there. And indeed, that was a perfect opportunity for me to just say boom, 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 which that's a great song, by the way, the 1980 song, Boom, Boom, Boom. Anyway, the next one is quick story here that apparently, so the government is now it's getting tough on cutting down on overtime, especially among bureaucrats. This is BS. This is complete BS. But apparently, what they've said that they will do is they will. I work at a company where they turn off all the lights at 9 p.m. And so you just get up and you go and turn the lights on again. They just automatically turn off. You just go and flip the switch again. I get the feeling, one, they say that they're going to stop people working after 10 p.m. flat, and they're going to ask people to come into work earlier from like 7:30 and go home at 5:30. But you know what's going to happen? They're going to come in at 7:30 a.m. and they're still going to work until 10:30 p.m. It's just going to make them do more undeclared overtime, and it'll be harder to declare overtime because they're going to be under pressure and direction not to declare overtime. So I don't know. It is interesting that the government is trying to lead the way on reducing work hours, and that they're trying to do it through a mandatory change of work hours this summer. So I'm interested to see the results. I don't believe that it will work, but there's an interesting article there on a new initiative anyway, by the Labour working, and this is the Labour Ministry. So I guess if any ministry is going to stick to working standard regulations, it's going to be the people that create those regulations. Although I doubt that it's possible. They're notorious for heavy overtime. So anyway, moving right along. I saw this week going around in the tech stuff, and I posted this one because I think this is cool, and this is what I want. And two, it also relates a little bit to the airplane thing that happened this week. So Mercedes-Benz is demonstrating what's already been shown in some movies like Minority Report and things like this. This idea that, in the future, cars are going to go back to being true horseless carriages. Where the driver will be the car itself, and we will sit inside cars like carriages. And I can't wait for that. Actually, the idea that I could actually commute, or I could go to the beach, for example. The idea that I could go surfing. You want to wake up, that I could go to sleep inside the car, and this is what I want. I want to go to sleep, get a mattress, sleep inside the car, wake up at 5 a.m. at the beach with all my kit, get out of the car, wake up and get out to where you want to be, or be able to sleep all the way to work, or work in the car as an office on the way to work, that you don't lose all that commuting time from your life. And think about how that might change, that will enable people to live further away. And having the idea of, and honestly, I still wonder how, with all these automated self-driving cars, how that would work with emergencies, for example. What if a squirrel runs across the road? Or what if you have someone deliberately trying to crash into other cars? Will these automated cars be able to deal with every situation? I do think ultimately, if all the cars are connected and they're all on the same standards, and it's like a computer simulation that the cars cannot crash into each other or whatever, and we can completely just leave control over to them, which is what I would like, which is where I'd like to get within my lifetime. Ultimately, what that means is that we won't need trains. Perhaps we shouldn't have traffic jams. Everything should just be able to move, completely automated. Like you'd have intersections with cars just moving in perfect timing, with one would hope with higher precision than with drivers. Rather than a train, you could just go anywhere just by getting into a carriage, telling it where you plan to go, and spending that time in the carriage with the family, or working, or sleeping, or doing whatever. And I think that's really awesome. And the extension of that is that I think that's where airplanes have to go as well now as well. I love watching in my free time the Discovery Channel Mayday series, where it looks at these air crash investigations. And of course, while a lot of these crashes are mechanical failures and issues like that, I don't know, the issues are still, they're always ultimately, if it's a mechanical issue, it's a lack of maintenance, or it's a design fault. Design faults are probably the least human blameworthy. But then you have the pilot error, the air controller errors that cause crashes. I see people are very excited about the squirrel comments, but seriously, well, at least with an airplane, you don't have to worry about squirrels. But then again, you've got this other thing: if there are no pilots, and there's no ability to pilot a plane from within the plane, right? If it's completely external, I mean, they can't be hijacked, right? Like that. Or you can't have an asshole like this German guy who apparently decided to murder 150 people because he had bad eyes or something, and he wanted to be famous, so he just murdered his whole plane. And that's not a suicide, by the way. That's murder. And this is something as well, some people saying, well, he was, was this caused by, did he kill a whole plane because he was depressed? No, depressive people don't murder, they kill themselves. But this is a murder, and it looks a lot like that. And this guy just looks like the biggest asshole, to come out of Germany in a long time. I mean, and him being German has nothing to do with it. He just looks like a real scumbag. But again, is the solution, telling pilots not to go to the toilet? Is it having an air stewardess inside the cockpit? There was a hijacking in Tokyo a few years ago where the hijacker, who was an air simulator buff, murdered the pilot and took over the air controls, wanted to fly under the Rainbow Bridge, and the air controllers talked him out of that. But I don't know. I mean, you have to ask if we're having like drones bombing the Middle East from around the world, if we're having self-driving cars that don't need drivers that are coming out, if we have all these ships that are already going around that are almost always on autopilot. Why do we have to have so much of a human factor on the airplanes? Why not have the seats at the front, have windows on the front? Why not let me sit at the front of the plane where the cockpit is? If we can fly drones, and I know when I suggest that, and I see there's been some discussion about that topic. I wonder if I can find it down here that I posted, and some people saying we're not going to have automated airplanes for a while. And can I find it? I can't find it, and this is a weird sequence, but some people say, oh no, you need a pilot to deal with emergencies or stuff like that, I guess for the squirrel situations or whatever. But I mean, okay, what I reckon, start it with the cargo planes, or with the planes that don't have much of a crew in the first place. And you think about it, it should reduce cost, it should reduce the cost of building the planes and the necessity of the cockpit. Build these planes like drones, and see what the safety record is after 10 years of flying cargo planes unmanned. And if it means that it's going to be cheaper and the safety statistics are higher, for low cost, an automated teacher, be quiet in the cheap seats. If it means that the plane's going to have more seats and it's going to be cheaper, and it's going to be the human error factors can be reduced, I would totally happily go on a robot airplane. We already have the trains like the Yuri Komomen in Tokyo. I can't wait to go into one of these Mercedes cars and to fly around on airplanes that that fly themselves. I know everyone's afraid of hacking. Everyone's afraid of that. You know, I guess if you're a 911 truther and you believe that the planes were taken over by the CIA and flown remotely into those buildings or whatever, yeah, it might be a little bit scary, the idea of going into a computer hackable airplane. I hope that they'll figure those problems out in the testing phase, as I hope they'll do with cars, because theoretically I think we're dealing with the same issues. But I don't know, I just wonder, this guy said he's going to change the system. I wonder if the system is that we just get rid of pilots. Honestly, why do we need pilots? I don't understand. Half of the Air Force, the entire U.S. Air Force, is converting its entire air bombing and fighter capacity. They train at the Top Gun school now with all drone, like modified F-16s that are all unmanned, that they fly with like gamepads against the pilots. Surely we're very close now to having, the most sophisticated planes being fully automated. So I don't know. This is a technology thing. I'm watching and I'm thinking, I don't know. A lot of people say they'd rather be with a crazy pilot than a hackable plane. I don't know. I would like to see the two compete for like a 10-year period. And if there were demonstrated much fewer crashes with the robot airplanes, and they were cheaper, which they should be, I'd totally go with the robot airplanes myself. Hacking squirrels, Joe Casey. Yeah, I know everyone. Okay. By the way, King Cheeseburger, and people even hack cars, is a good thing. King Cheeseburger. Your shirt, by the way, I checked. It should have been sent out. It was 10 business days from March 18, so there's still 2 more business days within that range. But your shirt should be out soon anyway. I confirmed it was posted. Oh yeah, and I forgot to even mention at the start of this video. Congratulations to Lisi, to Jodan Do, and to Chitomo Wakaran. Tomo Wakaran and Jordan Do made awesome English subtitles on my Japanese videos, so thank you for that. So you're getting shirts for that. That's part of the competition I announced at the start of the month. And Lisi, she was just quoting me, but I thought it was still a catchy title. So thank you for picking the title for this week. And as I'll do from now on at the last show of every month, I will, if I remember, I will pick a title based on the Tokyo Tonight hashtag and send you guys shirts. So thank you for that. But yeah, digressing. So I don't know. For me, I think the whole thing about this is, how many times are we going to deal with, pilots going crazy or getting hijacked or having, mental breakdowns or heart attacks or whatever, and that's going to result in hundreds of people dying at once. I still think when they figure out the security issues and everything else, I'm looking forward to a future that, that we don't even think about the sort of thing as a problem anymore, and I'm sure that that's coming, and I'm looking forward to that. You know what? I didn't put a Hanami promo into this either. Emily Louise Maitland, and you're in Tokyo, right? You're coming to Tokyo for the Hanami. Hanami is going to be awesome. I should talk about that a little bit. So go and check if you don't already. In fact, I should put a link to the Facebook page for those who don't know. But anyway, if you're in Tokyo, or even if you're not in Tokyo, just come to Tokyo for next Saturday. Starting from 10 a.m, most people are probably coming around midday in Yoyogi Park. It is hard to find. There are so many people in Yoyogi Park on that day, including big Gaijin parties. Check out, there are videos that show where we've been in the past. We are pretty near where the toilet is. If you go towards the fountain, from the Harajuku entrance, you go towards the fountain, you go on the main path towards the fountain. It's on the left-hand side of that, but there are 2 or 3 parallel paths that go through all the cherry blossoms on the left-hand side of where the main fountain is, and in that there are tens of thousands of people. It's hard to and it is hard to find. Last year, the other problem is that there is no mobile phone reception because there's so many people close together that the interference causes people to not be able to make phone calls. So you're kind of on your own. Hopefully someone will put up something like a YouTube sign, or you'll be able to see my head reflecting or something like that. But please come and try to find us, and we will definitely, you'll get to see me and hang out. We can have some drinks, you can shoot some 360-degree videos together. It will be awesome. So come and see me and Emily Louise Maitland and everybody else. You're going to see all the promo vids this week for the awesome, this is the event of the year for getting to start. If you want to start a YouTube channel, go to the Hanami, because everyone's going to shoot videos introducing you. If you want to meet YouTubers, go there. If you are a YouTuber, that's where you get to meet everyone for the first time, meet people who share your hobby. Last year we had hundreds of people show up, actually. More than 100 anyway. And I think we're going to top it this year. So, make sure you come along and hang out with me at the Tokyo YouTube party in in Yogi Park, and I'm going to see you, Emily Louise Maitland. I'm going to see you, Lisa, sometimes, and I'm going to see a bunch of you other guys. So I'm looking forward to that. Next story. So next one is the one over here. Japan opts for massive costly seawall to fend off tsunamis. That's interesting. It's another good public works project, and it makes kind of sense. Of course, now everyone's reminded of how bad tsunamis are. They're talking about building a 6-kilometer wall. And how high are they going to build it again? I need to refresh on this. So it's going to be 400-kilometer chain of cement walls, and they're going to be 12.5. So yes, so okay, so they meet these these people in these fishing ports who object to these fishing walls that already exist, to these sea walls that already exist that obscure their view of the ocean. And indeed, that's what I thought myself. It doesn't say how high the plan is to make the wall in this case. Let me just see if I can see. I think 7.2 meters. So they're talking about existing walls. I come from a country where it's relatively young. We do have tsunamis, but once every 100 years or so. And when I came to Japan, I was really surprised that people build these huge levees all along the coast that you can't see the ocean from almost anywhere. And it wasn't until I first started learning about the tsunamis that happen in Japan about once every 10 years. Somewhere in Japan, there's like a massive tsunami, like as in 10, 20-story high tsunami. About once every 10 years somewhere, and when they come in, they are the most, probably short of an asteroid strike, they are the most destructive force of nature. More destructive than the earthquakes, as we of course all learned during the East Japan earthquake. So I came to understand why you don't see the ocean views, why they sacrifice that for these seawalls. Now the only thing is, while I agree with putting another wall and putting in more tsunami protection and all that sort of stuff, at the end of the day, these walls that were built were 12 meters, or 7 meters, or 8 meters, and in almost every case in this earthquake, they didn't save the towns that they were there to protect. And the reason is because for most of the coast of northeast Japan, the tsunami in this case was 33 meters. Now remember, one floor of a building is about 3 meters. It's about 9 feet. So a 12-meter, that's a 4-story building. That's a big wall that would obstruct your view, and that's, I think, what most are. But the tsunami in most places was 11 stories high. And again, as you saw from all the videos, everyone thinks it's a big wave, right? It's a big 11-story high wave. It's not. It's the ocean level rising like a tide until it's 11 meters above, and until it's 11 stories above the normal level. So, it comes with rush waves at the front, shock waves, but it's basically this would just overwhelm most of the walls that have been built. So this is the thing, I don't really get it, unless they're planning to build a 12-story wall for 500 kilometers around Japan. I wonder what point there is. If they build a 7-meter wall all along the coast, it might take some of the energy away from the shock waves of the tsunamis coming in. But it wouldn't stop them. And the thing is, as well, again with the tsunamis, the destruction isn't caused so much by the wave coming in. I mean, a lot of destruction is caused by the wave coming in and hitting these buildings and uprooting them and making them start to float. But the real destruction is when the water pulls out. As you can see, it's actually amazing. And there was this one in Hokkaido in the 1990s, which was the first time I really started to appreciate, whoa, okay, tsunamis are really dangerous. That town had something like it had another 5-story, huge barrier all around the town, and they had something like a 30-meter, 10-story tsunami as well. And even though they had this huge tsunami wall around the town, that barrier was still there intact after the tsunami washed out. But the entire town was wiped clean. It was like no one had ever lived there. So yeah, it's good that they're building it, but I'm not quite sure if it would be helpful or not. I don't know, but I'm in favor of anything that and it also makes me realize what an idiot I was for thinking, oh, well, where have they taken the beautiful ocean view? I would build a house here on top of these levees, these tsunami barriers, so I could see the ocean. That's a New Zealand and Australian mentality, and the fact that we, price real estate by whether it has an ocean view or not in Auckland or Sydney. But wow, I mean, we learned it for, I now understand, even in New Zealand or Sydney, at some point, Auckland's going to get hit by a tsunami, and all of that most expensive real estate is going to be the most dangerous, stuff. I hope it doesn't happen anytime soon, but I think Japan's got the right idea anyway, although at the end of the day, I don't know what you can do against something, like that. So anyway, interesting that they're actually considering building that, burying the power cables and building a cement, tsunami barrier. These are very old-fashioned LDP public works projects. But if they're going to do them, I mean, I still prefer this to the idea of building, bullet train lines to nowhere. Speaking of which, the Hokuriku Shinkansen started this last week. And it's almost completely empty, apparently. Although I think it is good that they have bullet trains going out there. But it is better than meaningless infrastructure. But, I don't know. But it's a good reminder that we are really constantly in a lot of danger from this stuff. We did a show with Victor. I did a show with Victor this week on 2.5 Oyajis and with Busan Kevin, who was good enough to join, about the whole spirit thought for the Western men trapped in Japan. And I'll say it here, I actually re-recorded that on Skype with Victor, and it took about 2 hours. We actually did a cold, rational, scientific analysis of that article. The reason that we did it was that was a really bad show on Wednesday. I was excited and incoherent with how frustrating I found that article to read, and I swore too much. I used inappropriate, derogatory language, and I was incoherent, and I feel really bad for Kevin. We're going to get him on again because that wasn't a good show. That was I've seen people leaving comments, they thought that was a good show. It really wasn't a good show, and frankly I feel like I need to apologize for the half the things I said on that show. They were just, so I appreciate that Victor called me up and he said, dude, that wasn't good. And I said the same. I know. And so we re-recorded, and hopefully it's going to go up soon. And the thing is, the re-recorded show, where I forced myself to remain calm and not swear and keep my sentences short, I think was the best video we've done in a long time, except it's like 2 hours. It's a marathon, but it covers a lot of points. It shows the valid points that Olga has, as well as where, in a calm and rational way, where she fell down and where the Japan Times editors, I think, just abdicated responsibility for the quality and reputation of their newspaper. But anyway, we recorded a really good video about that. So two things. One, I don't know, I'm going to do a poll on this. I'm going to replace that video, because we're going to replace that video, and because I feel bad about the things that were said on there. I mean, I apologize for that video. I think I should take it down, which I don't do lightly or often, but yeah, I don't know. Do you think I should take that one down? I don't think it was good, and I think I'll do that when we have the other one up, which will be on Gimmeabreakman's channel, which is the channel it should have been on anyway. We just weren't sure if he could join because, he's looking after a newborn baby still. But anyway, there was a better video on this coming. In fact, an excellent video. The video that we re-recorded of this was really good, so you can look forward to that. But I'm sorry I did such a crap video on 2.5 Oyajis the other day. And yeah, there's a better one coming, so check out the better one, because I think it's actually good. Actually, and that one wasn't. And yeah, it's a valid topic. And the other thing, I guess I'll come back and I'll say one more thing. It's a wasted opportunity, because the phenomenon of people trapped in Japan, white men trapped in Japan because of circumstances that are Japan specific, exists, and I can think of types of people who are trapped here. She doesn't really pick up any of them properly. There was a case that we were talking about on Twitter, for example, of people who are in marriages which they want to divorce, but at the same time they know that even if they stayed in Japan and they got divorced, they wouldn't have access to be able to see their children anymore, let alone, of course, if they left the country, although leaving the country would put them in the same situation as other international marriages. But it's compounded by the strange local family laws that don't recognize. They are starting to recognize joint custody and visitation rights as being beneficial for kids, but they're not there yet. So there are people who are trapped for that reason. There are people who are trapped because they stayed too long and they never developed other sort of skills and they were too comfortable. And there are people in that sort of situation. There are lots of situations of people who are genuinely trapped. And although whether you should feel sorry for them, I think is a kind of a separate discussion. Some of them are still in quite good circumstances, but you can certainly say that they are trapped, and some of them trapped in not not nice situations. And you could have done it with this, and I would have happily. I'd offer to do that for her. Actually, I could write that article. It's kind of a wasted opportunity, anyway. But in any case, there is a better video on this coming, so look forward to that. Next two stories we've got here. This one is interesting. So the SMAP. SMAP was the first mega male idol group, the Backstreet Boys of Japan. Maybe not the first, but certainly one of the most successful of all time. The Backstreet Boys, as it were. But they weren't just... if you take the Backstreet Boys and you imagine them being the host of every TV show and doing a cooking show, and all of them acting acting roles on all of the top dramas on American TV, like one member of Backstreet Boys is in Prison Break, and another member is in Breaking Bad, and another member is in Ellie McBeal or something, and they have a cooking show, and they have a live show, and they sell constantly. They sell songs that are #1 on the charts. You have an idea. Remember, Japan's economy is not, well, it's the second or third biggest in the world, and its population is half that of America. So imagine if there was a single boy band in America that had even half the influence that SMAP has, because SMAP is the most, across all media, influential group in Japan, and the members, they've been going for 20 or 30 years now, and they're all still extremely prominent, all the way across Japanese media. Originally there were 6 members, but one of the original members decided in the first year that he wanted to go and be a dirt bike racer or something. So he left the group, and it became a 5-person group, and it's stayed that way ever since. They erased the existence of the 6th member, even when they do the look back videos or whatever. I think because they have to pay money to the guy if they broadcast him. But the other 5, of course, they're from this talent organization called Johnny's, and Johnny's is like a music school that trains boy bands, idol groups. And with groups like SMAP and other groups being so successful, and there were groups before SMAP as well, older ones, and this inspired parents who wanted to live out the dreams of their kids becoming a pop idol superstar. The American Idol parents, I guess, would send their kids off to this kind of school where they would live inside this dorm run by the talent agency. They'd just go through round-the-clock dancing and singing training, and be put into a program where you can see on some of these big Johnny specials on TV, they have all the kids that are coming up dancing in the background, dozens of them. And the most successful, the most talented kids get picked to go into these band units that they form out of this talent agency run kind of program to become these boy groups, which Johnny's is so powerful as a media organization in Japan. They don't just sign, huge CD sales and music company sales and get to control their music charts. They become movie stars, TV stars, top advertising, promoting people. They're everywhere. And SMAP is the very top of that. The thing with Johnny's, however, is that there have been a few tell-all books released by people who have left Johnny's or been in the Johnny's organization, and various journalists who have looked into it, who have put out a lot of rumors about Johnny and what goes on at Johnny's. And among the rumors, and I don't know exactly where all of these stand, I think everyone pretty much accepts that these are all sort of true, is that Johnny himself set up a school for lots of little boys to train how to dance for a reason that he's kind of into that sort of thing. And among the people who have received advances, and some not always wanted advances, included members of the group. These are all over the internet. That they these rumors about, for example, members of the group were cornered or put under pressure or whatever, unwanted advances from men in that organization. And there have always been rumors about, so and so, they actually, because of course they're idols, and the whole market, the economy is on promoting them as objects of desire for women. But there have always been rumors that so-and-so is actually, he goes on a lot of vacations with men, and he's got a lot of, that guy, he's always, in fact, there was an episode which Victor even simulated a few years ago, where, who was it? Was it Kusanagi got drunk and he went to a park and he took off all his clothes and he stood on a bench and he was shouting out the name of another one of the group's members, Shingo, Shingo, and Victor kind of reenacted that. which kind of said, oh, so he had a crush on the other member and stuff like that. There have always been these rumors going around. Well, apparently there was a TV special this week where they went to one of the quieter members of the group, Goro Inagaki, and he introduced his roommate. He's a very, very, very good dress sense, very good looking, friendly looking guy, and they're looking wonderfully happy together. And good on him. I mean, geez, he's like 45 years old by now. He didn't actually come out and say, "This is my special friend," but it's obvious. And as soon as this happened, all the 2chan boards went crazy, saying, see, And you know what, even the boards, and this is Japan, there's no Christian stigma against gays or anything here, although there is a bit of a social convention stigma against it. But everyone's saying, oh, look, he's out. Well, he's almost out of the closet. He's doing everything but actually saying it. He's pretty much come to my house with my gay lover and hang out and, do an interview and, we won't call it that or whatever. He's just my roommate. It's a bit, I guess you could say it's a little bit like the Seinfeld interview with George and Jerry where they're mistaken for that. Maybe that's what the situation is. Not that there's anything wrong with that sort of thing. But, it's kind of funny. The neck kind of went, oh, there you go. Anyways, there's a lot of, pop. You have to understand, Johnny's is probably among the most powerful talent agencies in the entire world, just by economic scale and influence. SK in Korea is probably actually the biggest. And Johnny's has definitely been surpassed by Akimoto and all of those groups recently, and I don't like any of these groups, to tell you the truth. I don't know if the negative rumors about them are true, and I'm not going to sponsor that, but these are things that you can just find floating around that people, they wonder. Is that, no one knows. And I don't know how substantiated these are. These are just a lot of gossip stuff that publish these. But it's kind of funny, and frankly, I think it was kind of nice, actually, to see Goro there looking, happy with his masked special friend. I think that was good news. Speaking of good hairstyles, we have Robert D. Erdlich. He's been at the center of a lot of the Okinawa drama lately. I'll put 2 Okinawa articles into here. One is that there's been a big kerfuffle in the last week. I mentioned this last week, that the new government of Okinawa is opposed to moving this American base. They're taking this American base, which is basically, the story goes back to I think 1992, 1995, sometime around then. Okinawa, the main island of Okinawa, is 25% covered in American bases, and there are like 20 bases in Okinawa, and it's like more than half of the U.S. presence in Japan is in Okinawa, and frankly in Northeast Asia. And those troops, those U.S. troops in Okinawa, they protect South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, and they've kept the region safe for the last 50 years, but at a huge burden and cost to the Okinawan people, who not only tolerate, hosting half of their island, being filled up with Marines, but also, occasionally those Marines get out of control a little bit. And there was a case in 1992 where 3 Marines raped a 12-year-old, kidnapped and raped a 12-year-old. And this in a situation where they're living on base land that's confiscated from the residents. And they've been asking for their land back. And on top of living on top of this confiscated land, then they rape a child. And like the Okinawan Forces commander told the press, the guys should have just got a prostitute instead, which again didn't help anything. And it got so bad that the Americans were forced to make a concession that base. There was another incident as well where there was a helicopter crash beside that base, which fell on a university. And everyone's saying that that basically, these bases there are too many of these, and they're on confiscated land, and they're in the middle of densely populated areas. So we want these bases out of Okinawa. And the compromise which the Japanese government did with the United States was said, okay, we got to give some of this land back because, there's going to be a lot of there could be civil unrest against the bases there. So they agreed, they did this deal with Japan that they would relocate the base from Futenma. And the original idea was we'll try to find another place for it. Maybe Guam, maybe Palau, maybe somewhere else in Japan, but we'll move it away. When they couldn't find another location for it, and America wants to have its troops all close together there in Okinawa, they came up with a compromise solution, which is that there's a camp on the top of Okinawa called Camp Schwab, which is beside a big reef, and they decided that they could do a reclamation of the reef. They could build a huge helipad, like an airport, like Kansai Airport or whatever, out over this reef. So it would be reclaimed land, so it wouldn't belong to anybody. So they would be able to move the base, give all the land back, be in a part of the island that's very, very sparsely populated, would be out of the way. and would reduce the safety and the population risk. So it seemed like a pretty good deal. There's two problems though for the Okinawan people who are against the move. One is that fundamentally they're still saying, why do we still have this huge overwhelming presence of US troops? We want them to leave. Is one of them, and the other one is the other source of objections has been the environmental damage of destroying this reef, beautiful coral reefs that they have at the top of the island for the purpose of building this extra base. So there are constant 24-hour round-the-clock protesters around Camp Schwab and around Futenma that don't want the relocation to happen within Okinawa. They want the base to disappear, and they're very, very aggressive. You can see videos on YouTube, by the way. These base protesters they're left-wing affiliated. They're anti-American. They're anti-base. With a lot of good justifications for that. But they just as the Coast Guard and police can be very aggressive with the protesters themselves are not above being violent and being very aggressive themselves. So at the moment we have this standoff where the recent Okinawan governor who was elected, the last governor, after a lot of pressure within Okinawa to not sign off on this move, on not allowing this base to relocate within Okinawa and to still keep all these troops within Okinawa. The LDP, Abe, promised a huge public works boost for Okinawa, all this money, everything that he ever asked for on a wish list. Abe said, you got it, let us keep the base, and he signed off all the base permits. But just after that they had an Okinawa governor election, which the guy who sold out lost, and the guy who won was a guy who said he would absolutely make sure that they never build another base within Okinawa. And so what happened was, just after this new governor came in, they found that at the moment they're doing all of this drilling and sampling over these reefs. At the moment they're trying to for building this new airport or heliport over this reef. There's constant kind of what would you say? There's protests anyway, which are being fended off by the Coast Guard in a kind of a barrier area around the construction area. And apparently, they found kind of a technicality, which is that they said that they have the people building the base have the permission to drill and destroy the reef to the extent, given permission, where they're actually building the reef. But the actual area, the no-go zone around the construction area that they've created to keep protesters away, they're also using concrete blocks to weigh down buoys for that, to mark that area out, which are themselves destroying or causing damage to the coral reefs. And someone said, wait a minute, you don't have permits for those extra buoys for the exclusion zone. And those are causing damage. And those environmental permits were signed off by the governor, under the regime set up by the Fisheries Ministry. So the governor said, we suspect that those no-go zones are causing more environmental damage, so I am going to, unless the government finds some other way to create its no-go zone, in 1 week we're going to retract all of the permissions to build this new base. And the government and the US military said, well, we've got all the permits fair and square, we don't care what you say, we're going to keep doing it anyway. So right now there's kind of a standoff between the Okinawan government, which is threatening to retract all of the permits to allow the construction of this new base, and the government, which has said back to them that we don't care what you say, we're going to do this anyway. And apparently the permit, which was issued by the Okinawan government, was issued under the authority given to it by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. Of course, the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries is a member of the Abe cabinet, so he said yesterday that he basically nullified the Okinawan governor's order to stop work. He rendered it, meaningless. So basically, the government's stomping all over Okinawa, at the behest of America. America's of course, driving this, and it's causing a real confrontation situation between Okinawa Prefecture and the central government at the moment. And so yes, with all that, apparently, so you have this academic, this doctor, what's his name, I'm reading his name is katakana, what's his name in English, Dr. Eldridge, who is apparently affiliated with the US military in Japan, and is also a professor from Okinawa. He's gotten himself in trouble twice this year, and it looks like the second time now he's been dismissed for it. The first time was he appeared on the right-wing YouTube channel Sakura Soul TV, for which I don't think well, if it's like a Zaitokai channel or something like that, which would violate YouTube's, an actual hate speech channel would actually violate YouTube's terms and conditions, and wouldn't be allowed to exist, I don't think. Sakura So I've seen before, I'm familiar. It's basically like a Tea Party channel. I wouldn't say it's quite a neo-Nazi channel. It's a Tea Party channel. They have some out there opinions, but they're still within the realms of generally speaking of just very conservative political discussion. They had him on as a guest. They talked with him for an hour. The video is on YouTube. And in Japanese, they were talking about all the military cooperation between US and Japan and the role of US forces in Japan, all the good things that the US did after the earthquake and all the support that they gave in Operation Tomodachi to help with the, with the recovery from the earthquake and so on. And there's a question right near the end of it where the lady there, who's obviously very right-wing persuasion, but very nicely asks him, so it must be tough for the families living in Okinawa, facing all of these people there, these protesters who are always, criticizing them and living under this kind of pressure. And he said, well, it's true that there's a small percentage of the population in Okinawa that engages in hate speech towards us, but we all know that they don't really represent the true people of Okinawa, and they're just a small, minority, and we know that, we have a very good relationship with Okinawa. So it was a very political response that he gave. But some of the Okinawa protesters who are watching this, who found out that he was on this right-wing channel, and two, that he described their protest towards Americans as being hate speech, took exception to it. And the Japan Times cottoned onto that as well and said, oh, look, this American guy is affiliating with the right-wingers and calling protesters against his base like hate speeches for protesting, which isn't exactly what it was. But, he's accused the protesters of actually, engaging in violence directly against Americans in Okinawa, which I don't know if that's true or not, but he kind of got in a lot of trouble and got a lot of criticism from the Japan Times over that. However, this week that's been escalated again because apparently he shot some video on a base of a protester being arrested, and he took a handycam of that, and apparently he provided it to his right-wing NPO friends as an example of extremist left-wing behavior that they posted. And the video got traced back that this was provided by the US forces there, that they were providing video to right-wing groups to put on the internet, and he got dismissed for that, for leaking that video. And it shows again how tough things are in Okinawa at the moment and how finely balanced it is. Anyway, going on. Quick, just FYI for everybody that apparently the new Gaijin cards, which have been distributed now for over a year, but if you're still on the old Gaijin cards, you have to update to this new one that looks like this one over here by July, or else it'll be invalidated. And this is for the whole switchover that we now have. It's the whole switch of the foreigner registration system from the local city government to the Ministry of Justice to the central system. And that actually under which we actually have more residence rights than we had before. It's generally a good thing. It also is tied in with the amendments to improve the re-entry issues and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't have a Gaijin card that looks like this, you better go get one because you have until July. An update that the Hague Convention on Parental Aspects of Child Abduction has been enforced in Japan for 1 year now. It hasn't been spectacular, but the purpose of the convention is that to make sure that parents don't take advantage in custody disputes of taking their kids away in the night, or taking them out of school during the day and putting them on an airplane and going to a country where the other parent will not be able to have access, or where the parent can, by virtue of the jurisdiction, get a more favorable custody order. Japan's always been outside of that system, which meant that if any Japanese person outside of Japan with kids could, especially if they are a woman, because not without exception, but generally speaking, most of the cases women get complete sole custody in Japan, and there's no visitation and no joint rights on that. You can get basically, particularly for mothers, if you rush the children back to Japan in the middle of a divorce or even before a divorce or something like that. The mother wins. You first to get back to Japan to put the kids on a plane and take them to Japan. You can prevent the husband from ever being able to see the kids again. And this is something, there's a case of hundreds, maybe thousands of foreign dads who have been lobbying in America for a long time to force Japan to sign up to this convention. What it does is that it forces member states to the Hague Convention to recognize the family law custody orders of other countries. And more importantly than that, it also forces parents who try to take their kids away to another country without permission. It forces them, Japan would force those parents to go back to the original country and to sort out the custody first. That's the theory. The only flaws of it are, one, that the system is only effective going forward from when it was brought in. So for the old cases of this happening, it still doesn't fix them. So those parents, those mainly foreign dads, who are in the situation before this convention came in, this doesn't yet help them, although there's still some lobbying to try to improve that situation. The other issue is the fact that, in truth, countries still have trouble. It's very hard for a Japanese court to understand and enforce American family law, even though that's what this convention presumes to do. It's still going to find in the best what it deems the best interest of the child. And so, it's not a perfect system. However, it is starting to work in a small way. However, at the same time, there still is a lot of noise that the old historical cases something needs to be done, and at the very least, and I know people on Twitter and on Facebook who are in the situation who just want access. They haven't been able to see their kids in years. The kids are literally, presents and cards are sent back or whatever, and there is a cultural thing of this that when a marriage breaks up, the idea that the father is dead and shouldn't have contact, which is not consistent with other countries, and also the idea of visitation being good for the kids is now coming in and being recognized within Japanese family law. But it's a really bad situation to be in, and the American government deserves some credit for lobbying Japan effectively in this area. Yeah, that's good news. I've got some other things here. What's going on in Okinawa? There's a good timeline of the whole thing of Okinawa that I tried to summarize in dribs and drabs just before. It's worth reading. It's a great summary. Damn, we are up on an hour, but I'm going to keep going. We don't have that much more. Supporting refugees in Japan. There was a great story which I haven't found on the internet yet, but it was on NHK 9 o'clock news the other night, which is featuring one of only 2 or 3 offices dedicated to supporting refugees who come to Japan and make refugee asylum applications in Japan. So last year Japan accepted 11 refugees out of 5,000 applicants. So that's an acceptance rate of about 0.2%. And of those 11 accepted, 5 of the accepted people, among thousands of applicants, were actually supported by this NPO called the Japan Association for Refugees, and I'll put the link over there. And credit to NHK, they did a fantastic 15-minute special showing how tough it is for the refugees that are here in Japan. Refugees are here while they're waiting for their application to be processed, which takes about 3 years. They're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to earn income. They actually take food and clothing donations at this NPO, which basically is a bunch of lawyers that for free pro bono support the applications of these people, which takes 3 years and is only successful in 0.2% of the cases. I mean, there was something like 40 refugee applications from Syrians in Japan last year, and only like 4 of them were accepted, and they came from Syria. I think what these people, there are good people in Japan, like the people who work at this Japan Association for Refugees, who dedicate their lives to helping these people, simply because they want to help them, in spite of the terrible odds against what they're doing. And for me, they're located in Shinjuku in Yotsuya, and I think next time I have some clothes to give away, or honestly, I'm going to go scope them out and see if I can donate some food and stuff to them, because, to me, this is much better than, throwing clothes away or donating to, the food bins or whatever. This is where stuff is actually going to be used for people who need it, who can't earn money to support themselves. At the same time, in terms of, it goes without saying that Japan's record on refugees is absolutely shameful. To think that Japan actually had the chairperson, Ogata-san, a lady who was the head of the UNHCR for many years, and yet Japan doesn't accept asylum seekers. And yet they were the head of the UNHCR, because they give it lots of money. Japan donates, is one of the top donors to the UN and the UNHCR. They pay for tents and blankets for people to live in tents in Jordan and, in Lebanon and so on, to keep them where they are and give them, money for where they are. And that's good for what that is. But, Abe is so big about, and Koizumi and so many of the last few Japanese governments have been so big on the idea that we need to change Article 9 so that Japan can be a proactive contributor to peace, so that we can participate in peacekeeping and collective defense, and we need to have a normal military. And they focus on the way that Japan can normalize and act like a normal country in the world, contributing to world peace through having a military, which is something that requires this huge change to the constitution. Japan could be acting like a normal country and contributing to peace in the world right now just by accepting more than 11 refugees out of 5,000 applications every year. I mean, these are not immigrants. These are people who are escaping genocide and Holocaust type situations. And speaking of the Holocaust, I mean, Japan actually has a historic hero called Tsunami Sugihara, who was now I forget which embassy he was in. He was in one of the, maybe Germany or one of the East European, maybe Poland. He was a Japanese diplomat, and he signed transit visas through Japan for 6,000 Jews. Basically, until the embassy got shut down. He was just writing transit order after transit order, which basically gave those people passage for going to America and going to places where Jews were not being murdered. And they call him the Japanese Schindler. He was not working at the direction of the Japanese government. He was acting spontaneously. Him and his wife just spent every hour of every day just filling out transit visas for these German and Polish Jews to allow them to escape. And he was doing it as a renegade, but he saved the lives of, basically what became in the post-war situation, these type of refugees. Japan has an Oscar Schindler, like a person who people pay huge tribute to as a humanitarian and example of a great Japanese hero in this regard. Emulate him. You don't need to change Article 9. You don't need to have a military to be contributing to world peace now. Japan can be doing it just by, treating these people more fairly, and the organization most dedicated to helping those people be treated fairly is, this is one of them, is this Japan Association for Refugees, and I think they deserve support. So I put the homepage there. They've got an English homepage and other language homepages, so I put the link to the English homepage, and it's worth looking at and definitely worth supporting them. A couple of other good blogs, but I think I'm going to skip over a couple of these. The Tofugu blog on In Japanese is really hardworking is good. Most of the blogs and news stories about is Japan really hardworking? They work long hours, but they're not really doing anything. That's bullshit, and that's not fair, and that's a really superficial, bitter, burned out Gaijin assessment, which you see over and over again. Tofugu being Tofugu, which is great. They've done a much more nuanced, a much better look at this, and I think they did a really good job. So that's worth looking at. There's a history as to, apparently Abe is about to visit America. He's going to be the first Japanese PM to address Congress. It's never happened in 70 years. They call Japan America's best ally in the whole world, and they've never invited, of all the people they've invited to speak in Congress, and partly because of bitterness for Congress people over World War II and this and that. It's always been too controversial, and apparently Abe is going to be the first one to speak to both houses of Congress, which people think is a reward for his moves to militarize Japan, which America's wanted ever since they made the mistake in their own eyes of writing Japan's constitution banning the military. They wanted Japanese to come and help them in Vietnam like they forced the Koreans to do. So now that he's going to give them their wish, I think that's probably the trigger anyway. But there's an interesting look at the history of that. I took some very nice Instagrams, you can see there. And here we go. This is the final. This is the AP Explains. This is what you should read about Japan's long wait to address U.S. Congress. Oh man, we are over these things don't get shorter, do they? The era of 360-degree YouTube music videos has begun, which I am going to be shooting those as well when I can figure out how to edit them. I'll talk about that at the very end of this. There was an interview with Abe during the week. He's actually now visiting America, and he gave an interview for the Washington Post, where they asked him, "What do you think about the comfort women?" And he gave an interesting answer. He said, he said actually, let me see if I can pull that up because it's worth reading. I think this is the last. Okay, this is the last one, the treasure hunting. So. Washington Post, it's right near the end. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. Oh, and people talking about imperialism. So they said, why are you such a revisionist? And what do you... So the question here is about, they say that you're a revisionist, and they don't ask about comfort women specifically, but he volunteers this statement. And this is really interesting. I'm just going to make that so it's a little bit more visible. Let me come over here. Okay. On the question of comfort women, when my thought goes to these people who have been victimized by human trafficking and gone through immeasurable pain and suffering beyond description, my heart aches. On this point, my thought has not changed at all from previous prime ministers. So he's reaffirming the Murayama statement, the Cornwall statement on this. Hitherto in history, many wars have been waged. In this context, women's rights were violated. My hope is that the 21st century we will be able to will be the first century where there will be no violation of human rights. Well, it's too late for that. And to that end, Japan would like to do our utmost. Now, this was raised controversially by the Sankei, saying, oh, he admitted to human trafficking of comfort women. What he did here, well, one, everyone says that he denies that comfort women existed. He's acknowledging comfort women existed here, and acknowledging their pain and suffering, and acknowledging that, and upholding the previous apologies from the previous prime ministers. So it kind of shows there's a lot of exaggeration about what Abe says. He gave a very politically correct answer to this, but there's an interesting nuance. Rather than there's a point of debate between Japan and Korea over whether the comfort women were abducted and press ganged into being comfort women by the Japanese military, which happened in Indonesia, for example, or whether it was, as Japanese characterize it, as a case of kind of prostitution and human trafficking. And this is a problem where if they were kidnapped and they were forced into this, it was more of the nature of human trafficking than of the Japanese military going and abducting people's daughters. So he acknowledges all the pain and suffering, and he acknowledges, the apologies, but he says that this is a human trafficking issue, which by most accounts, and even by accounts within Korea, some accounts within Korea, it is. But this is kind of, he is, by acknowledging this, while he's accepting the responsibility and kind of acknowledging the pain and suffering of the comfort women, at the same time he's also reminding that this is a case where some of these women were sold by their own families and by Korean pimps to the military, and the military paid for them. It didn't know where the money went. They said they didn't get the money, but it was going to human traffickers a lot of the time, and that's the whole problem with the human trafficking system, especially when you have governments involved, which continued to happen both in Japan for US troops, Allied troops during the occupation, and during the Korean War in Korea, when the Korean government provided a comfort woman system that also had human trafficking. I don't think he's trying to say this isn't our fault, it's their fault. Well, maybe he is trying to say that, but it's a nuance anyway, which is usually lost in this debate. The thing is, the Sankei is treating this as controversial because it's saying, oh, did he actually affirm the former? Because the Sankei, which is a right-wing newspaper, doesn't want him to acknowledge the previous apologies, or the pain and suffering, or that there was even human trafficking. So from the right-wing perspective, this is hugely controversial that he admitted this much, even though you can see he's trying to be a bit clever about it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Nice thing there on Chinese tourists and how they're all buying coveted, what is it again? The treasures, the four treasures. The four treasures are Japanese, what is it? A Japanese rice cooker. Oh, you know what? I might not be able to read this. Let's have a look. Please don't block me. Please don't block me. Please don't block me. Close. Am I blocked? No, I've still got within my article limit. So what are they? They're brand name rice cookers, vacuum flasks, ceramic knives, and high-tech lavatory seats. The four treasures for Chinese tourists. And they're selling a lot of them at the moment. So that was pretty cool. Okay, that is all the news topics. I did skip one, which I'll come back to, which is YouTube 360. I've been putting up videos during the week, shot with this, the Ricoh Theta 360. I'm about to shoot a video with it now, while I talk about it on this show. And through this, you'll be able to, well, do I want you to see this room? So to power it on to shoot video, if you want to take photos, you just press the power button on the side here. If you want to shoot video, you power it on by pressing both the power and the Wi-Fi at the same time. And once that little blue light is on, if it's not too bright, okay, so it's all set to go. So I'm going to put that there, and while I talk about this, I'm going to record, and you're going to be able to see everything in this room when I post this eventually. So I believe that is, actually I should turn this around so I can make sure. Is that recording? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually use the app for this just to make sure. I don't want to take any chances. So I'm going to show you how this works. And oh, you know what? I think it is recording. I can't tell. So okay, let's do this. I'm just going to connect it with the wire with the app, and once I do that, I'm gonna basically it allows to shoot through the whole room, and I think it is going to be a big thing, especially for Japan. Just the fact that I can show you everything all around me while I'm using it. So let me just switch Wi-Fi network to connect to this. Okay, let me do that, and boom. Okay, I can see that now, so let me do this. Okay, I'm getting dead air from this, so let me power this off, power this on, and record. That sounded like the right noise. I'm pretty sure it's recording now. So anyway, even if it's not, it's not. But it's good to see all of you guys. And so with this is the Ricoh Theta 360. It shoots all the way around, spherical video. For shooting videos outside, I can walk and talk. I can tell you about where I am, and you can see all around at the same time. And I've already posted some videos that show how this works. The thing about this is that it is it shoots a 1080p video, but that video stretches all around, above and behind, which means that whenever you're looking at the video on the screen, which you can only see the effect properly in Chrome, if you look at it in any other video, it just shows the whole 1080p video all distorted, trying to show all above and behind in one video. But it appears properly if you look at YouTube through the Chrome browser, and if you do, it just shows a little window, which is basically like a 240p or a 360p window, and that's why it looks kind of crap. But the point is, you can scroll around the 1080p video and see any part above or below, and that's what makes it look really cool. The only thing is that it means that the resolution is probably going to have to get a lot higher for it to look good in any one direction at any time. But that said, this is really, really awesome, and I can't wait till, at the moment you can't edit the format. It's only been around for about a week, and I'm going to post, I've just recorded a review of this, which is going to go live tomorrow, that you can see. But I've already posted some videos. You can watch the videos, well, you can watch it outside of Chrome browser, where you'll just see it, the whole thing at once. But try to look at it within the Google Chrome browser, and you'll be able to see the cool 360-degree effect, which you know, I think is awesome. So, oh, by the way, actually, that reminds me, my shorts have run up a bit. It probably looked like I wasn't wearing pants, and you can probably see that. That's the excitement that you have to look forward to when I post this video, provided it's recording properly. So yeah, that is that, and that is the show. So I'm going to go out by doing by basically doing a live recording of the you know what, I think it's recording now. So anyway, that might not have worked, but I'm going to record some music out, and then I'm going to, this is going to be my Hanami track, which I am going to make available on SoundCloud, as I always do, for you all to use Creative Commons. But I'm going to call this one my Sakura, my Hanami and Yoyogi video track, and you guys will all be able to use it. So let me plug this in. Let me just take this off and set this up very quickly. So I hope you enjoyed the show. It has gone 1.5 hours again, but yeah, stuff happens. So instead of the usual instead of the usual iPad, I'm going to be using my iPhone today because that's what I use to record this. So let me boot up the app and let me put this camera, point that the right way, and point that down and turn this on and switch that over, and boom. So you can still hear me, and if I plug this into the top, no, because it goes in the bottom because it's not an iPad, and I make sure that the sound level is still not too high so I don't burst all you guys' eardrums when I start playing this. And I check the volume level, and that's the track that I made. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have a go at live recording it. So let's turn on the live recording mode, and I'm gonna record this live, and that's gonna be the show. So let me bring this video over here so you can see me while I do. Oh, you know what? Whoa. It's flipped out, so there we go. So you can watch me do this live. Turn on live recording, and let me try to figure out. Let's start with that, and boom. Cowbell. Always needs cowbell. Skip something there. We keep this one short. I think I'm just going to outro that, and that'll be the end of the show. Taba outro. And that's the end of the show. Thank you for joining me once again. See you again next Sunday. See you on Wednesday on 2.5 Oyajis. Big Hanami. Make sure you come to the Hanami on Saturday. And I will see you otherwise on Saturday, if not next Sunday on Tokyo Tonight. See you again, and congrats on shirt winners. And see you again soon. Peace. Boom. And I'm going to upload that to SoundCloud. What am I going to call that? I'm going to call that one... I'll call that... Hanami... Sakura... What should I call this? What's a good title? Sakura Beats? Sakura Beats is a bit... Sakura Jam. That's a good one. Boom, Sakura Jam. Next. Boom, boom, boom. Check out my show outro. Free to remix and reuse. Boom. And there it is, uploading. And that's how I do my thing. Boom. So I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like and favorite and do all that good stuff. If you enjoyed the show, as always, retweet. Remember, send me your show title suggestions on the hashtag Tokyo Tonight. Congrats to Jordan Do, Chito Markarang, and Lisi on winning shirts this week. Great to see you all, and cheers and butter for everybody. Good night. Peace. That was cool. I just have to turn this off now. Oh, it's still uploading. And where are we? Upload complete. Boom.